been to a wedding knows that that never happens. That also didn't happen at my wedding. So anyway, if it is not, we've got a few stream improvements for today as we're slowly building out my kind of tight. Also in the bottom left corner, I think for you guys, it is not an official integration, but if you want to know what I am sipping on during the stream, I've got that up. And funny enough, I actually finished that one while I was getting ready. So I think if I hide that and maybe I transition, there we go. I think I can make that more official later, but now drinking a delicious Phase 3 out of Lake Zurich outside of Chicago. I highly recommend it. And today we are talking about offensive line. This was a request. I realized I have not given enough love to the guys up front. I don't know how often I actually talk about this, but I started my career as an offensive and defensive line coach, so I have a lot of love for them. And they're a really important part of this offense. You can tell that, I guess it's worth mentioning, right? We're recording or going live. This is Sunday, September 6th, 2020. And Army destroyed Middle Tennessee State yesterday. Capping off, I think they had a 19-play, 99-yard drive, which as a Flexbone coach, that is like your dream. Because it just demoralizes the other team. I believe they also scored a defensive touchdown, so they wound up scoring 6 touchdowns in 5 possessions. Those stats are obviously just so outside, and a lot of that has to do, right, like Michael Orr blindside, making sure you're able to get the pass, being able to push things outside. Where in a Flexbone offense, a lot of times we are letting that defensive end go, and we're not even gonna. We actually want to do the opposite as they go to the inside. In a Flexbone offense, typically, right? This is, but typically center because they need to be smart, they need to be heads up, and especially if we go against an odd front, that guy has to be able to handle a nose guard one-on-one. And then typically we want our guards to be the next biggest, and our tackles are the least big. I won't call them small. We'll go least big. I think that's probably the best way to do it. Oh, and you know what? This is what I get. I realize my webcam border went off. I really need to figure out how to do this. For some reason, the software does not enjoy when I refresh certain things. I'm going to try this like once or twice, and if this doesn't fix, I'll just be mad about it later. Other podcasts and streams on Twitch and YouTube after this. So this is to know what we're going to be talking about. I'm mirrored, so I need to remember that. But then also I'll be able to mark those off on what we talk about, and that should be bueno, I think. So we're at O-line basics. Beyond continuing with the basics, I should say. And other coaches draw them out this way. If we really wanted to be technical, right, I would highlight actual demonstration. The idea being we want coming in hard, they being the defense. Your offensive line is going to have an extra step to pick that up level, right? This can go back and forth. What you'll find is if you start at 3 foot and you hammer 3 foot, I know we have literally like a yardstick on the end of another stick. I think technically it's PVC pipe, that we go through camp and make sure we're measuring 3 feet, 3 feet, 3 feet, 3 feet, and really hammering what 3 feet looks like. No one knows how to exaggerate length than high school boys. So 3 feet, I think, is a minimum. What is also important as you're going through your practice and everyone down into an area. And so when you're like, shoot, I don't know why my run plays aren't doing better. A lot of times it splits. And you can work with him, and depending on how that defense is lining up, right? If they've got an outside shade defensive end and your tackle is smart and you're running triple, you're running anything else, you might tell that tackle, hey, if he's going to keep going, widen out to 4, widen out to 5, right? The more natural spacing that we can create with our splits, the better we're going to do. But you have to watch it, and you have to make sure he's smart enough to say, hey, if that guy's not widening out with you, you got to get your ass back in, because otherwise you're creating a huge gap for him to shoot through. As far as how far back, the rule is that you want your offensive line, your guards and your tackles, their helmet, right, the ear hole of their helmet to be at the hip of the center. So if this is my center, right, we would want tackle, right? He'd probably be there. Man, that worked out way better than I thought it was going to. So there should be this nice, I didn't want to grab his butt. Like Army, that is over for the sake of conversation. There we go. We do not generally do that. I have had a center who tended to stand straight up. But the way I want it to. Anyway, I think you guys get the idea. Let me try to make this a darker color. And that doesn't really work either. I think you get what I'm talking about. We don't need to spend too much time on this, other than to know, we always tell our offensive line, you should be as far back as possible. And the best case scenario, you should be as far back where you're getting a warning from an official, either as a coach or a player, that to move. Let's see, anything else on offensive line alignment? You want to make sure that your tackle is very good at being even with your guard. So if your guard is as far back as possible, but your tackle decides to bow further, we do not want any bowing on our offensive line. As far as stance and start, our typical stance, some people are very big sticklers on like which foot back, which hand down. When I coached lower level high school, I just wanted kids to be comfortable. If you are at a point where you have, you know, D1 talent, D2 talent, I'm stream skips. Sorry, Johnny. Short answer was no. I don't have my center in a 4-point all the time unless it's the extra help. So, where was I on that? Oh, and I think that takes us through our first part. Oh, I did all that time to try to get this to work. Stream's laggy. That's not good. Let me check the other. Sorry, this is getting meta, trying to check what's actually going on. All right, sorry. I don't know why that's going like that. I'm going to... Let me know in the chat if it's still skipping around. I wasn't getting the same issues, but that's not to say that you guys aren't. I was going to image slideshow. I set this up to try to go next. All right, seems better now. I don't know, maybe that's on my end, maybe, I'm sure I was probably messing with something where it wasn't. I haven't played anything off my soundboard that I started, so we'll go with like a thoughts and prayers. Isaac asks, when it comes to O-line, do you want them having a flat back and head down or not? This is something that people, this is actually exactly where I was heading. In a traditional offense, at least when I was taught, you know, you wanted people to have a balanced stance. You know, you wanted to be able to like hit their hand away and make sure they didn't fall straight down. In a flexbone offense, we usually want about 60% pressure on that hand, the butt up, almost a sprinter stance, because a lot of times we're getting off the ball. You know, we're not pass blocking, you know, you're not reading people's hands on whether or not they're going forward or backward. For some kids, right, again, I'm speaking mainly at the high school level. Some kids are just not athletic, and no matter how hard you try to adjust their stance, they just won't do it. So you have to try to figure out how you can get them, butt in the air, a good, right angle at the knees. Small tip I learned as a player. If you have a kid who, all right. If you have a kid who has his feet, how do we want to phrase this? A kid who almost has duck feet, right? So if his feet tend to go out like this, so you might have a big, powerful kid, but he's over there with goofy feet and he's not getting any power. You can actually have him cheat his stance, and instead of being 90-90 or like straight forward, tip the tip of his feet in just a little bit. And it's going to feel a little unnatural, but what that does is that coils the spring of the legs. So he's going to generate more power. You're not going to waste it with your feet spread out. You're going to push off your feet. And I'm sorry if I just hit the mic and that made things bad. I've done that with a lot of my bigger linemen and have seen a lot of success with it. As far as our first step, we are here. I had this set up because I'm going to use this later for something else. First step is always that 6-inch step, right? So here, it's going to wind up basically replacing the hand that was down. And from there, once you come up and you replace the hand, that first step after you take it is going to be your push-off step. As far as hands, this is something that I work with a lot of my linemen on. I get them very used to, I'm sure everyone is used to hitting the bag, hitting the sled, bringing your hands up. I try to overemphasize that I want the insides of their forearms coming up against their body and staying there. Too many times when linemen come off the line, those elbows come up and those hands come up, and you're losing so much power. And if they're anything like my kids, once their hands are out here, they're getting, the defensive player is getting into their chest, and then at that point they're just holding and hugging, and none of those things are good. So overemphasizing, right? Thumbs up, you want to hit with these right here, and I realize I'm looking like a seal on stream. Forearms across the body, everything is coming up, and you should be attacking with these parts of your palms. Let's see, what point was I going to make here? As far as types of run blocks, this is where once we got our stance, we got our start. Now we need to know what types of blocks we're gonna make. If we're gonna down block, so what would be a good example? Interesting. So Isaac says not all weight forward. There's an option school here in Georgia that has their O-line on all fours and they almost bear crawl since cut blocking is illegal here. I have seen schools that do that, and I have seen sometimes that's personnel dependent. If based on the kids, if they stand straight up otherwise, and you're like just bear crawl because it'll be better. That's one way to do it. I think there's a school or two here in Illinois that does it that way. Sometimes if they're so far forward, like if you do have to pass, that makes things really difficult. But if you're saying that they're selling out that way and they're literally blocking it the same way every time so that the defense can't get a read on it, I see the value in it. I don't know. I'd like to hear more, see more about it. As far as here, I'm going to try one thing because I had this all set up and now my hotkeys are not working. So give me one hot second. This is the problem with trying to do things on the fly that I always run into. It was working earlier. Hotkey. Unfortunate. I was hoping that would work. I don't know what to do now. I'll live, I think. Can I don't want to loop this. Still not working. That's unfortunate. All right, well, just imagine that there's an X over what we were working on earlier. That'll probably make the most sense. Otherwise, oh well, whatever. I won't bore you with that. Let's go. Oh, interesting. I guess I am getting a warning that my frames are dropping. I wonder why. I'll blame my internet. Let's say Daniel asks, what coaching points or drills do you use to teach and emphasize good pad level? If you have shoots, shoots are something that you have used extensively because then you can teach a kid, like if your pad level is too high, you're going to hit your head on the shoot. Other things that we do is try to take like a board type of sumo